All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Reflect and Rise podcast. I am your host, Adrian, and we have a very special podcast guest for you today. I'm really excited. We have Sophie joining us from somewhere in the world. Hi, Sophie.
Hello, Andrew. Thank you so much for having me. I'm in Toronto right now, but that will change in a couple of weeks. So.
That's one of the reasons why I'm so excited to be chatting with you, because you have this lifestyle that I'm sure a lot of us are very envious of, which we'll get into. But for starters, why don't you give us an intro of who you are and what you're up to these days?
Yes, happy to do that. Well, I started my career in the UK as a registered dietitian working in the healthcare system. I found it to be very stressful, very difficult, very challenging. I couldn't really be my true self. I was burning out constantly and I hated it, honestly, even though I had spent many years of education to be there. And then I had the opportunity to move to Canada in 2016, and I've been here for 9 years now. So that's technically my home base in Toronto. I started a medical communications company, which was my first successful business, and I did really well. And I particularly loved the business side of it, the marketing side of it, the networking side of it, because I didn't have a network when I showed up in Toronto. I knew nobody. I didn't have family here. I didn't have connections. So I was very successful in a short period of time. People started asking me, how did I do that? I started coaching them and teaching them all the things that I was doing. And then ultimately, my coaching business surpassed anything that I was doing on the writing side. And now I work with people who want more freedom. A lot of them are writers. A lot of them are just looking to change their lifestyle, get out of their 9-to-5 or their corporate role, and build something of their own that actually supports the life that they want to live. And that's what I get to do now every day, and it's awesome.
I mean, it sounds incredible. And something that really struck out to me is the bravery from you to move everything. From the last podcast, I heard you had to sell your apartment, sell everything you own, and move to Toronto. So you knew nobody once you landed in Toronto.
No, I'd actually never been to Toronto before. I'd never been to Canada before either. My boyfriend at the time, he had come out here just for a work trip for a few days. And he was like, you would love it. And we had the opportunity to move through his company, and it was all my idea. Like, I was talking to his boss and I was like, hey, he would be great as a manager if you put him in this office. And I knew they would support us with the actual, like, I mean, it was tight financially. We didn't have any money. So we gave up our apartment. We sold all of our stuff. We had just enough to get our flights and just brought a couple of suitcases, and his company shipped over like a few remaining things. We had like maybe like 10 boxes of stuff, and it took months for that stuff to arrive, and because they delivered it to the wrong people, and there was a whole thing there. But they covered our visas, and they shipped those few boxes, and that was it. Like, we just showed up there on our own. We didn't know anybody. We had no idea what it was going to be like. And that was when I decided to start my first company.
So you started your first company when you knew no one, and you like started from scratch. And correct me if I'm wrong, but is this the Prospology company you were talking about earlier?
So initially I tried to do nutrition consulting because that was my education. And honestly, I didn't know anything else at that time. So in my mind, I was like, oh, okay, I've got all this nutrition education. I want to have a business. I'll just put those things together and that will be my business. But it wasn't really aligned with my passions and what I'm really good at and what is unique and strong about me. And so it never went anywhere. It was a complete flop. But it did allow me to launch myself into the entrepreneurial world and meet other business owners and learn how everything works. And I did make some great friends and some great contacts. through having a business. And I realized that having a business is the biggest networking tool that you can have, because there's a reason to go to these things and there's something important to talk about. So that wasn't my thing. But a couple of years later, that's when I had the idea to really go all in with my writing business, because I had one client that I sort of brought with me from the UK because I was working remotely with them. And this one client refused to pay me more than £10 an hour, which was just ridiculous. And no matter how much work I did for them, no matter how great I was, they never wanted to pay me more, which was so frustrating because it was taking up all my time and I loved the work, but I just felt so undervalued and so frustrated that I just said, you know what, I'm leaving and I'm going to have a proper writing business of my own and I don't need you anymore. So that was kind of the big breakthrough entrepreneurially. And then because my writing business took off, that's when the coaching started almost at the same time. I was doing the writing and the coaching just because I was growing so quickly that everyone around me could see and they wanted in on it.
Yeah, you were already seeing the impact at that point, and then that's when people started asking, hey, how do I do this too? And is that around the same time where you started having that freedom life cycle?
Yes, absolutely. Because I didn't want to start a business if it was just going to keep me trapped in the burnout cycle that I had always been in before. I just didn't see the point in that. I wanted to do something that was remote. And this was way before COVID, before working remotely was considered something you can do. I knew that it was possible to do this because I had had this one client for the last couple of years. And I was able to move from the UK to Canada and keep this client. So I was like, hang on. Maybe there's other companies who could hire me as a writer where I don't need to physically be there and I can choose my own schedule. And as long as I'm being paid fairly this time, then I can do that. So then I realized that having the medical background that I did meant I could charge like 10 times more right off the bat for my writing services. And I started to think more strategically about who my ideal clients would be and who would be willing to pay a premium for these services that I was offering. And so everything changed when I started to realize as long as I can provide value to my clients, it doesn't matter if I'm physically in the room with them or not. And so then that just unlocked this whole host of possibilities in my mind that was like, no, I live in Toronto now and I can travel freely and I can do my writing business and I can do my coaching and I don't physically need to be anywhere. And it was just the only way forward that I could see that was sustainable, because any time that I had to force myself to do a commute or to be in a location that didn't feel aligned for me or be around people that weren't energizing to me and having to put on a mask to pretend that I was excited about something if I wasn't, or that I was energized if I was tired, like it just didn't feel authentic to me. And so from day one, the goal was to have as much freedom as I possibly can while monetizing my skills.
I feel like that last sentence really hits home for me personally. You said you feel like that you want to maximize your freedom while still maximizing your skills. Is that accurate?
While monetizing my skills, yeah, because the freedom needs to have money to support it. You need to be able to fund your lifestyle, but you can fund your lifestyle in a way that monetizes the skills and the experiences that you already have. You don't have to go back to school, you know, because I looked into all of that. And for me to requalify as a dietitian or as a naturopathic doctor, which was pretty close to what I was doing, it would have cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars that I didn't have. And it would have set me back another 5 to 7 years. So I just eliminated that option immediately. Like, no, I'm not going back to school. So what can I do with what I already have? And it took a while to figure that out because, you know, in Canada, the healthcare system is completely different to what it is in the UK. Like I said, I didn't know anybody. So I was learning through just kind of stumbling upon things or doing research, and everything that I had worked for was no longer feasible for me. So I think sometimes you just need to be clear on what it is that you actually want and choose to prioritize that. And for me, freedom was always the number one thing, and making enough money that I can support myself. So when I just put those things together, and I eliminated all the expensive, time-consuming, sidetracks that you can make, or the routes that some people will take, then it just became obvious to me that, okay, my strengths are connecting with people. My strengths are communication. My strengths are bringing passion and energy to everything I do. So how can I monetize that? And that was just the only thing that I thought about until everything fell into place.
That's so powerful, because one of the things that I'm so curious about is, was there a moment when you were like, okay, this is what I want to do, like this is it, I have no other choice? And were there emotional barriers to that? Like, I know that I get imposter syndrome when I start thinking about that kind of stuff. Did you run into anything like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so before we get into the imposter syndrome thing, because that's like a huge area, I want to touch on the first part of your question, which is like, did I always know, or when did I know that I was doing the thing that I wanted to do?
Yeah.
I think what's really interesting about people who crave freedom and who need autonomy and they just want to be in control of their own life is it doesn't really matter as much what they actually do. And I think a lot of people are afraid to admit that, or afraid to let that be true, because there's this understanding in general from society that we have to follow our passions and we have to make sure that the thing that we're doing is the right thing. And, there's this assumption that there's only one right path for each person, which really isn't true. So when I allowed myself to admit that actually the freedom was the number one thing for me, I didn't really care about what kind of work I was doing. I just needed to have autonomy. So then it does shift the priorities. And that's why I have the freedom that I do, because I put that above everything else. I put that above even the type of work that I do. Obviously, you want to optimize all of that as well. But if I had the option of like taking my dream job with, all the benefits, all the money, like all the travel, whatever, but I was working for someone else, I would never take that option. I would rather work for myself and make pennies and live under a bridge. Like I would. So the freedom has to be the number one thing. And this is why I have a newsletter called Freedom Focused Entrepreneurs, because some people say that they want freedom, but they don't actually prioritize freedom. They lock themselves into situations that keep them stuck and keep them in the place that they're in. And then they wonder why they don't have freedom. So that's part of it. And so I was really open to anything that could create that freedom lifestyle for me. So the first thing that I thought of that I knew would give me good money and allow me to have the lifestyle that I wanted, that's what I did. And that's probably one of the reasons why I then evolved from being a writer myself into being a coach for other writers and other entrepreneurs, because that thing, it was right for me at the time, because it gave me the lifestyle that I wanted. Then when I had the lifestyle that I wanted, I was like, oh, and I also want to enjoy the work that I'm doing. So I kind of shifted the type of work that I was doing, but I kept the lifestyle components of it. And so everything we do can be repurposed and can be part of our new story. And we can also like get rid of stuff from the past that doesn't suit our new version of our story or our new identity. So once you realize that, you can kind of shape shift into whichever new identity you want, whichever role you want to play. And that's the funnest thing about being an entrepreneur, I think. And so the imposter syndrome is kind of like the side effect of, oh, now I know what I want to do and I'm going to follow my dreams. Oh crap, like I'm terrified about actually taking the steps to make this thing happen. And I was carrying so much with me, like so much emotional baggage and psychological barriers that I faced. It was crazy. Like when I first moved to Canada, I couldn't even open my email without having a panic attack or something. I was terrified, and I would hide away in my condo day after day in the dark, in my bed, like not wanting to face the world. And there would be like a couple of days of hiding, and then one day where I would venture out and go to an event or something, and then I would hide again. It was like there was only so much that my nervous system could actually receive, and if anything got too good, then I would just shut down, and I would kind of bring myself back to what I was comfortable with. So it wasn't until I first started working with a coach who understood that I was carrying all this emotional, psychological baggage from my childhood, from past relationships, and things that was affecting my confidence in that moment. Then I started to realize, like, I'm not broken. I just have things that my brain is trying to keep me safe, and it's trying to protect me, and I can overcome these things because other people have overcome these things. So once I knew it was possible to work through that, I just dedicated myself to doing the inner work just as much as doing the outer work, because they go hand in hand. If we try to do one without the other, we don't have any success.
I see. When you're talking about all of these changes that I hear within yourself, I think you said in a past podcast that there's only one you, and your relationship with yourself is the most important one you'll ever have. So how did you create a good relationship with you to get to that point, to have that bravery to take those steps?
Yeah, that's such an important question. A big part of it was that I could reach a certain level of success and a certain level of confidence in the relationship that I was in, because I was in a very supported relationship. But I could only get so far because there was a sense of safety, but only safety when I was with this person, and only safety when they were around. They were protecting me. So I became extremely codependent on that person to take me outside, like make sure that I'm showering, make sure that I'm showing up for things, make sure, he was managing me essentially because I couldn't do it alone. And then it also got to a point where he was trying to keep me safe from a financial standpoint. He didn't want me to take risks in my business. He didn't want me to try new things and invest in the business. And then that I interpreted that as he doesn't believe in me. He doesn't think that I'm going to be successful. So all of these things just created this barrier that I could not penetrate. And in order to push through that, I had to end that relationship, even though I loved this person, even though we'd been together for 8 years, even though we had moved from the UK to Canada together, and we had this history, and we had all these mutual friends, and we knew each other's family, and everyone was asking, when are you getting married, and all this stuff, because I realized that if I wanted to be the best version of myself, I shouldn't have this person in my life. And so that was a big breakthrough for me. And that allowed me to really stand on my own 2 feet. And I think the majority of the trust in myself that I now have, and the confidence and the respect that I have for myself, comes from the fact that I stand on my own 2 feet. And yes, I can get support, I can get help. All of that is available to me, but it's my life. I'm showing up for me. I'm doing what needs to be done to show myself that I've always got my own back. I make good decisions. I trust my decisions. I know I'm going to do what's right for me and not fall into these old habits of self-sabotage and, stopping things before they actually come to me. And so it's that combined with just great coaches and mentorship and just, showing up for myself every day between then and now.
Hearing you talk about all the steps you took to get to a good relationship with yourself, dare I even say like self-respect and self-love, I know that myself included and my listeners, we might be wondering, what about that concept of self-hate, or thinking that you're not good enough, or you look at your patterns in the past and you think, well, those are patterns that continue in my life. How do I disrupt that to get to that good relationship with myself?
Yeah, I had a lot of hatred for myself. I had a lot of things that I was carrying around with me that I felt guilty about, that I felt ashamed of, that I felt I had to hide from everybody. And it was making my whole existence really heavy. And
Mm,
I got as far as I could without really looking at that too much, because I would do journaling and I would talk to therapists and counselors and things, but it would never get to the depths of what was really going on in there. And I
mm,
don't that, like, either there wasn't enough time, or the person wasn't that interested, or I didn't think they could help me, or I felt too vulnerable, or whatever it was. And it wasn't until I started working with a particular coach in 2020 during the pandemic, and she just wanted me to get it all out. Like, I sat with her for, it felt like hours, and she just kept asking me about all my biggest, deepest, darkest shames that I had from my childhood, and all the things that I had internalized about what that meant about me and how difficult it was. And she just listened to me, and she just took it all in, and she just accepted it, and she affirmed that that sounded really difficult, and that was a really tough thing for me to go through. And I was bawling my eyes out, like, because I'd never talked about this stuff before, and I certainly never expected that kind of reaction from anyone.
mm.
And it was partly because I was paying her to support me with this, and it was partly because she was genuinely interested, and she really did care about me, and she'd been through a lot of similar things, and she knew that I just had to get it out. And that was a real turning point for me, because I realized that it's not really as bad as I think it is, and there
Mm.
are people out there who might still accept me, and maybe there's a way for me to reframe these things where it's not shameful, and it's not something to hide, and it's not something where I did something wrong, or I shouldn't have allowed this to happen, and all these things that we internalize during these traumatic moments. So I took that with me, both sides of it, the side of what if it's okay for me to express things, what if there's a way for me to reframe all of these things so they don't hold me back, and then the other part of it of, wouldn't I be such a better coach if I actually see and hear people fully, and I respect them and honor them regardless of what mistakes they feel they may have made, or what flaws they feel they may have? What if I can hold that space for them? And wouldn't they have such an incredible transformation because I did? And so I can pass that on to my students, and it's just been a game changer.
I can imagine. I know that you also talk a lot about intuition in your talks. Did you ever have to fight with your intuition?
Yeah, like pretty much every time. um, yeah, and this is why it's like the theme of my next event that's coming up in September, because I didn't even realize how important it was to listen to my intuition. I didn't even really know how to listen to it. I didn't
Mm,
know what it could do for me as an entrepreneur, because what happens is the longer that we spend working in systems that serve other people, following paths that have been laid out for us, or reporting to managers who we don't respect, or you know fueling a mission that we don't even care about, we start to form these versions of ourselves who conform to these things, who abide to these principles, who agree with this way of doing things, when actually deep down we don't agree with it. We don't feel aligned with it. It's not the way that we would do it. It's not what we think is right. But we shove all of that down because we want to fit in, and we want to be accepted, and we want to get a promotion, or whatever it is that we benefit from by not being our true selves. And so when I was about 5 years into entrepreneurship, that was really when I first started to question all of these things. Like, am I really living the life that I want for me? Or do I have this version of life that I feel like is acceptable to other people? Even though I had been self-employed for years at that point, I still felt like I wasn't truly honoring myself because I was afraid that I would get rejected, or I would get outcast, or people wouldn't approve of it, or what if I made bad decisions because I'm taking a leap of faith instead of doing what seems like the logical thing to do. And so it became sort of an obsession in a way, just to practice that and experiment with that and see what actually happens when I do that. And it totally shaped the way that I experience life. And that has been the biggest thing that has improved my relationship with myself above everything, is recognizing that there's always this intuitive voice and then there's this logical voice inside us. And we can listen to them both, we can consider them both, but we don't necessarily want to take the logical route all that often. It's usually the fear-based one. It's usually the one that says, this is what works on paper, and this is how you've done it in the past, and this is what so-and-so thinks you should do. Whereas the intuitive voice, it just knows. It knows what's best for you. It knows what you want. It knows what's going to feel great. And that's usually the one with the most resistance psychologically, because it might counter the beliefs that we formed in the past that kept us safe in the past. And so this is where the nervous system regulation comes in, because we feel like we're doing something we shouldn't be doing. We feel like we're stepping into dangerous territory, or even just going against people who we respect, or just being stupid or being irrational. But actually, it's the best thing that we can do. And so this is why I have a whole conference that's going to be dedicated to this topic, because it is hard to understand, it's hard to explain, and it's hard to think about real scenarios of how it actually fits into your life and your business. But when you start to focus on that and be exposed to that and study it and practice it, you realize that it's just the most incredible tool that we could all use to our advantage.
One of the topics that I wanted to touch with you on is a quote that you said that I really like. It's, you have to build emotional safety so you're stable no matter what's happening outside of you. And I was wondering if you could help us help unpack that a bit and tell us how you reach that emotional safety within yourself.
Yeah. Well, when we've been through a lot of traumatic things and difficult times, and other people are involved, often we internalize those things as if we did something wrong. We could have handled it better. We're very hard on ourselves, and we blame ourselves for a lot of things. Like, I shouldn't have put myself in that situation, or I shouldn't have said that, or I shouldn't have reacted that way. Even if we did what we thought was best at the time, we'll still kind of go back and relive all of these things and internalize what does it mean about us in a negative way. And when we do that, which happens quite naturally, all these things kind of build up over time to the point where in the present moment, we don't trust that we're going to keep ourselves safe. We don't trust that when we launch something, or when we move towards something, or we take a risk, or we try something new, or we start a new relationship, or whatever it might be, we don't trust that it's going to be safe for us because we didn't keep ourselves safe in the past. So our brain is reliving these past moments and attaching all these stories to it about what it means about us and how this is how we're going to mess things up like we did before. And so this is partly where the intuition versus the logic shows up, because maybe your intuition is saying that it's different this time and you know it's going to work, but then your logic is like, yeah, but every time you tried this before, it didn't work. So that's a part of it. But then the safety part, the emotional safety part, is showing yourself that you take care of yourself, you prioritize yourself, you meet your own needs, you show up for yourself the way that you need to, regardless of what is happening around you, so that you can take these risks and you can take these steps forward and you can be in these uncomfortable moments without feeling unsupported. Because we can have external support, but we have to have internal support too. And that relationship with ourselves, if there's so much damage that's been caused there, then we don't feel that connection with ourselves. We actually don't like ourselves at all. So we pretend that it's almost like we disconnect like the soul from the physical body, and we just ignore the soul part and we just show up as like just the body. But without the soul, you're not really able to make the impact that you want, and you're not really able to feel supported. And you've got to bring that soul back in to bring the life back into your business, and also to feel that no matter what you do, you're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm. Something that I was thinking about as you were talking was, no matter what you're going to do, you're going to be okay, and feeling that sense of safety within yourself. When you say that, I immediately think to like my inner child and feel like, oh, my inner child didn't feel safe during certain moments, and that perpetuated into my adulthood. How are those two things related, your safety in adulthood and you healing your inner child?
Completely, because the child version of us is still us. We don't really differentiate that in our day-to-day life. We don't think to ourselves, this is what child version of me thinks, and this is what adult version of me thinks. Like, we might have an awareness of how our beliefs are evolving, or if we're trying to question certain beliefs that we have formed that we know are not true. But the actual feelings that come up when we are in the present day situations, we often don't even realize that they're actually feelings that our inner child is having from when we didn't recognize ourselves before. So I'll give you an example of this because I feel like it's very intangible. I was recently in a dance performance group, and we had rehearsals every week, and we were building up to doing this live performance. And I was having a lot of friction with the instructor, and I was not feeling safe around her at all. And I didn't realize at the time that that's what was going on, but she was very controlling, very direct, very critical of me, and she was constantly pointing out ways that I was not good enough. She would interrupt me and correct me all the time. She would single me out and just make me feel bad about myself. And I noticed that my confidence was going down every single time I had a rehearsal, to the point where I was dreading going, and I didn't want to go. I was showing up 10, 15 minutes late every week. I was worrying about it for days before it even happened. So I sat with myself and I was like, why is this affecting me so much? Because it's just a dance rehearsal. It actually doesn't mean that much at all. And I realized that it was reflective of this parent-child dynamic that I had had growing up, where I was being criticized a lot, and I was being told that I was the problem, I wasn't good enough, I needed to be better, I needed to follow the rules. And if I didn't agree with the rules, I didn't want to follow them. Like, I had my own thoughts about how things should be, but because I was a child, I didn't get to say that. And it was that same dynamic, because my instructor was the authority figure and I was the child in that dynamic. So I would suggest things of how we could make things better in the choreography, and then she would say, no, this is the way it is, and this is the way it's going to be. And that was so triggering for me. And so it was just a couple of weeks before the performance, and I was a mess. I was not enjoying it at all. I was feeling like, this is breaking me, and I don't know if I want to continue. And I asked myself, if I was a child in this situation and I had a parent who was loving and caring towards me, how would I want them to handle it? Or if I was the parent and looking at my child in this situation, like my 5-year-old daughter, and she was telling me, hey, mommy, I don't want to go to class anymore. This lady is not very nice to me. She makes me cry. I have a tummy ache, all of that kind of stuff. I would be like, okay, you don't have to go anymore. Like, it doesn't matter that we paid this money. It doesn't matter that you committed to this thing. It doesn't matter that people are coming to this performance. All that matters is you're feeling happy and safe. And if you're not enjoying it, I'm pulling you out. That's what I wish that my parents would have done when I was in those situations. They had the mentality of, she needs to build resilience. She needs to follow things through. She can't quit. She can't pull out of anything. we have to intervene and just try to force the situation to work the way that we want it to, instead of recognizing that she's unhappy, she's being pushed too hard, she doesn't want to be treated that way, and she doesn't deserve it. And the money was prioritized over the feelings that I was having. So when I reframed it that way, I realized that I am parenting myself, and I am my inner child, and I'm my adult self. So I'm performing all these roles in my life now, and I get to decide what I do from here. And so that really helped me decide how I was going to proceed one day at a time. And the way that things played out, it was like the universe listened to me, because it just gave me everything that I needed in every moment when I made that decision. And I got through it, and I learned a lot. And I'm proud of how I handled it, because I took all those things into account, and I didn't just look at the present situation. I looked at the patterns, I looked at the emotions, I looked at the triggers, and then I asked myself, am I willing to live with these things, or am I going to do something about it?
It sounds like you approached it from a very like strategic and systematic standpoint, while still being emotionally true to yourself. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I really was falling apart emotionally. And part of this work, part of this inner healing work, is to allow yourself to feel all of the emotions that you feel. Sometimes it's overwhelming. Sometimes you're crying a lot. Sometimes you're a mess. And learning that it's okay to be that way at times, whenever you feel the need, is part of being loving towards yourself. Because again, like if I was a 5-year-old, would I want my parents to be like, look, you've already cried for an hour, that's enough, I can't, just get back into your life? No, I would hold them close. I would be like, let's cuddle up and watch a movie, like let's go for a walk, let's get your favorite food for dinner or something like that. I would nurture them, I would comfort them, I would support them. And then the next day I would say, how are you feeling about it now? Do you want to go back? Do you want me to talk to them? Do you want me to pull you out? What do you need in this moment? And so it's kind of slowing it down and taking it one step at a time, where you can recognize, this is me being really emotional, and this is me expressing all the frustration and all the anger and all the sadness and everything I'm feeling. And then once you've gotten it all out and you're ready to move to the next stage of, what does this all mean? Am I ready to do something about it? Then you can be more strategic about how you handle it. Because only the people who you trust to see that first messy part are actually going to see that. So that could be your coach, that could be your partner, that could be your parent. If you do have a very supportive parent, it could be your best friend. It doesn't really matter who it is. You've got to fully express and feel into all of that, because that's powerful information that then you can use when you get to the strategic part. But if you try to skip over it and just solve the problem, you're not really seeing the root cause, and you're not fully understanding it, and you're not fully supporting yourself so that you can show yourself that things are different now.
How did you learn all this?
Yeah. It's mostly through working with coaches. I would hire very specific people at specific times of my life or business where I could see that I had an emotional or psychological barrier. And sometimes I couldn't see that. Sometimes it was just, I have this goal and I know this person is going to help me achieve this goal. And then they just happen to be really good at the psychological stuff because they had been through it, and they had had coaches, and they had had therapists. So everything sort of feeds into one. I would never work with the same coach the whole time, because I feel like you get different things from different people, and you need different people at different times. My students often say to me, when the student is ready, the teacher will come. And I really like that expression, because they come into my world as a coach when they need me, when they actually are ready for all the things that I'm going to present to them and all the challenges that I'm going to give them. If then they might not be ready for years after they meet me, and then when they are, they know. So I never force it for them because it was never forced for me. It was always like I'm looking for the next thing now, or I meet this person, I know I can overcome this because they've overcome this, or I know I can achieve this because they've achieved this, or I know I can express these things fully because they're the kind of person who will receive that and who will nurture me and who will help me nurture myself. So it's getting really good at recognizing what the limiting beliefs are, what the gaps are between where you are and where you want to be. And then it's finding a coach or a mentor who can help you collapse that into, because we might think it takes us years to get there, but when we have the right coach or mentor, you could do it in days, you could do it in weeks. And that happens all the time with my students too, is they come in with a 10-year career plan, and then they come out a year later and they're like, I've already done all these things. You know, so it's because the psychological blocks are so big that we can't overcome them ourselves at first. And we need someone to show us and help us do that in real time so we can practice it. And then over time, we don't need that coach anymore because we've sort of embodied the principles that they teach us.
Now, I know for a fact that some of my listeners might ask, but there are always some people, the naysayers, who say, oh, why do I need a coach? What's the difference between a coach and a therapist? And seeing as you worked with so many coaches and very evidently have seen benefits, what would your response to those questions be?
Yeah. Well, I think therapy, I mean, I'm not dissing therapy. I think it can be really helpful for people and great if you're finding it helpful. But therapy to me was always, I'm the problem, I need to fix myself. And it was always independent of what I actually wanted in my life. So there wasn't really any motivation to do it. And you didn't know if you were succeeding at it because there really was no succeeding at it. It was just you go and maybe it helps you and maybe it doesn't. I didn't like how fluffy that was. I didn't like how undefined that was and how much it was lacking purpose. What I like about coaching is that it can be goal oriented. It can be based on, I want a freedom lifestyle. I want to feel more confident, or I want to make this much money, or I want to move from here to here, or you identify what you want, or you identify something that you want to overcome, and then you find the person who's already done that. You find the person who you trust, who can help you get there and just make the journey less tumultuous and more enjoyable. And it's for a defined period of time, usually, or in almost all cases. So you only pay for the time you need, and then you make the most of that opportunity, and you do it at a time when you're ready to do it, and you can give it the time and the energy and the resources that it needs. And then when you reach the end of that time point, you can go back to that person. You can continue on if you want to, or you can say, I got what I needed from this. I'm going to move on to the next phase of my life, the next coach, the next milestone, or whatever it may be. Or I'm going to take a break from that and just enjoy what I've built. And then when I'm ready for the next step, I will find the next person, or they will come to me. And so I like that it's a very stepwise approach, and that you don't have to do everything all at once. You can do what feels right to you in the moment for the time frame that you want to. And that is a very intuitive way of living life as well, which I think is why I subscribe to that.
Fully understood. And if I understand and like see the path that you've taken, it seems like getting to that place of peace with yourself, understanding yourself and knowing yourself well, gave you the bravery and honestly the skills to live a freedom lifestyle where you have your own business, where you can travel and work from wherever, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a combination of all those things. It's like the support, the mentorship, the inner work on your confidence, your belief systems, what's possible for you. And then it's the being able to enjoy all the things that you're creating and feeling deserving of that. That's a big part of it. And then it's making sure everything's sustainable financially so that it works from a business standpoint or from just a dollars and cents standpoint. And then just making sure all those things are cohesive and that they're actually reflective of who you are as a person, that you're not doing things purely strategically, that it comes from a place of knowing and like an actual alignment with who you are and what you care about.
Got it. You've said so much good things here, and I'm curious, as we're like heading towards wrapping up, I'm curious, what would you say are the top 3 things that helped you get to that place of self-love, that helped with your personal development?
Top 1 is definitely hiring coaches who I personally felt like I was vibing with. Like I aspired to be more like them in a certain way. I looked up to them. I knew they had knowledge, wisdom, experience that I didn't have, and I could learn from them and I could have accountability. That was definitely number 1. Number 2, I think, is being selective about the people that I spend my time with and open up to, because not everybody is going to be supportive of the journey that you're on or the things that you want to accomplish or even who you are as a person. So being aware of that and being able to curate your own circle of trusted people to go to with different things, that has been huge. And then the third thing, I think, is just the acknowledgement that at any time you can reinvent yourself. You can let go of what's happened in the past. You can create a new identity for yourself. You can create a new story, a new narrative, a new truth, and you can move forward. You don't have to let all this past stuff stay attached to you, and you can let it go. And again, like, maybe you need support in doing that, but even just knowing that you can is huge. It's absolutely huge. It doesn't have to be as complicated as you think.
Wow. Hiring coaches. And one question I had is, I'll probably talk to you about this offline, but I'm so curious about who the coach was who you did all that inner work with, because I was like, I need that.
Yeah, well, that's what I do now myself. So we can definitely talk about that. And anyone who's listening, that's why I started Intuitive Biz, because for people who are not in the medical field, which is usually where I work, for people who want to be more intuitive in their life and in their business, and they want to be expansive and they want to grow into a new, empowered, confident version of themselves, that's why Intuitive Biz is happening. And there's a program attached to that I'm so excited, because it just helps you build that trust with yourself in your decision making, in what you want, in your purpose, in why you're doing what you're doing, what you want to let go of, who you want to let go of, what you want to attract into your life. It's all very purpose oriented, and it's all going to involve this healing stuff that we've been talking about, because like, the number one thing we can do is just get rid of all the shame and all the guilt and all the blame that we carry with us. And then we can reveal all the new exciting stuff underneath, but if we don't look at that, if we don't address that, then we're just dragging this around with us everywhere we go. And it's making life feel heavy and difficult. So we can do that together. The person I was referring to, her name is Paloma Lev. She specializes in sales training. And that's why I came to her back in 2020, because I wanted to learn how to sell. And I had never been able to sell anything more than $1,200 at a time. And I had only done that once and I couldn't replicate it. So I hired her because I wanted to learn sales. She taught me sales, but much more of what we did was around the mindset stuff and around me liking myself as a person and wanting to show up and wanting to give myself a better life. And that's the biggest thing I took from it. And yeah, I'm great at sales too. I mean, I sell high ticket programs all the time and it's easy for me now. But the reason why it's easy for me now is because I like myself, is because I want to give myself all these awesome things. I deserve it. I've worked for it. and it doesn't have to be hard, and I don't have to prove myself anymore. I've already done all of that. That's in the past. And so, you know, I definitely felt like at that time she was exactly what I needed. And I have worked with her once or twice since then. But there's been other coaches who I've then gravitated to who could take me to the next level. And so I like to put myself in those very foundational stages with the people that I'm working with, because I feel like that's where I can make the biggest difference. And I can take people as far as they want to go. But if that foundational stuff has not been done, I can tell. So immediately I'm gravitating towards that. And I'm creating exercises for people to get rid of that shame, get rid of that blame, get rid of that guilt. I like to identify what the thing is that's holding someone back from being the best version of themselves, and then help them with that. So maybe they think that it's sales and it's not. Maybe they think that it's confidence, and that's part of it, but there's a lot more at play. That's one of the funnest things about what I do, is like people come in thinking that they need something, and they might need something completely different, but then they realize while they're going through it that this is the transformation I actually came here for, which is so cool.
Oh yeah, that's definitely incredible. And it sounds like she did so much more than just sales.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as we're nearing the end here, is there anything we talked about so far that you want to touch back on, or anything that we didn't talk about that you definitely wanted to hit on?
Well, I do have a book coming out later this year, so that's exciting. It doesn't have a title yet, but I can tell you what it's about if you guys are interested in getting a copy. So back in September, so currently it's the end of July, back in September, my business reached a point where it was not profitable at all, and it was about to go under, and I was considering just abandoning my whole business. This is my coaching business. And I went to an event that I had spent $3,000 on a ticket when I had the money to do that. I went to an event and I had like basically no money in the bank account, and I was like so depressed, like everything's not working. And I turned everything completely around in this time frame, which has not even been that long. So the book is going to be a 12-month timeline from the day I showed up at that event to the day that that event happens this year, because it's an annual event, of everything I went through from like that really low point to the whole transformation that I went through, from relationships, business, money, confidence, all these things. And it's going to be documented in a memoir format. So it's going to have like real conversations I had with people, the inner dialogue, and like what my thoughts and feelings were along the way, all the big decisions that I had to make, how I made them. It is very raw and very honest and very open, because I want to help people who are on the verge of giving up in their business or in life in general, and show them that you can turn things around in any moment. And it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter how bad it gets. It doesn't matter what you've been through. You can create a whole new life for yourself. And it's been really fun to write, and I'm really excited to release it. It's probably going to be one of many in a series, because it's just a 12-month time frame, but it's my first one, and I'm putting my heart and soul into it, and I think it's going to be fantastic.
My goodness, what a cliffhanger. I want to read the book.
Right? I know. It's really, really good. I mean, it's because I've been through it and I'm still living it now. And, it just goes to show that whatever we've overcome and whatever stage of life or business we've reached, there's always another level that we can get to. There's always another level. There's always another challenge. There's always another setback. There's always another opportunity. And that's what I'm portraying in this book, that even the most successful, confident people who have the exact life that you want, they might not be happy in that moment, and they might have their own inner work that they're doing. And as a coach and as a mentor, it's really important to me that I'm honest about all those things with my students. So I never pretend that I just have everything figured out. I never pretend that everything is perfect all the time. I'm very honest with them about any struggles that I go through, any things that I overcome, what I'm working on, who I'm working with, all the ups and downs of that, so that I can normalize that with them. And this book is, it's one of those examples. I loved my business and I was very successful with it, but then I turned around one day and I hated everything about it. I was like, no, this isn't right. This isn't working. This isn't what I want. And everything changed. And that's what the book's about.
Man, so because this podcast is called Reflect and Rise, we talk about resilience. I feel like that book is exactly what this podcast message is about. So to anyone listening, we definitely want to support Sophie in that book. So speaking of which, if our listeners wanted to hear more from you, wanted to follow you, wanted to work with you, where could they find more information?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm big on LinkedIn, so you can find me, Sophie Ash. I am also on Instagram, and my handle is Sophie Ash Official. I'm kind of on Facebook, same handle, Sophie Ash Official. And then my website for the intuitive entrepreneur is intuitivebiz.com. And there are a few different options to work with me that you'll find on there. There's the general admission to the conference itself in September. And then there's a couple of programs. One is a group and one is a one-on-one called Intuitive Reset. So you'll find all of that on intuitivebiz.com. And then I'm also going to give you guys a coupon code so you can get 40% off the general admission. So I'll make sure that that gets put in the description under the video and whatnot. But I would love to see you there. And it's going to be great fun.
That's awesome. And thank you so much, Sophie, for giving that to our listeners. We really do appreciate it. So listeners, as a thank you, please make sure to go follow Sophie on all the socials and show her all the appreciation, because this episode was gold. We hit so much good stuff on here and we could have talked for so much longer. I anticipate we'll probably ask you to come on for a second interview at some point. But any final words for the listeners?
Just keep going, like I wrote my book because I really, after 6 years of being in business, I was considering giving it all up. And that may sound crazy to people who have, who can't even comprehend doing it for that long and then giving up. But, there are going to be moments where you feel like this isn't working. I can't do this. It's too hard. It's too difficult. I'm not cut out for this. But you are. You absolutely are. If you're listening to this kind of podcast, if you're reading these kinds of books, if you're interested in this stuff, that means that you're meant for more. You haven't reached your potential yet. And there's a reason why you're listening to this right now. So act on that. Keep going. Recognize that this is your chance to turn over a new page, start a new day, and change something. And you won't regret it.
Well, I don't see any other way to end the podcast than there. Sophie, you've been absolutely incredible. What a message. What good stuff. If you made it to the end of the podcast, thank you so much. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, all the socials. Don't forget to follow Sophie. I'll include all of her details down below. But Sophie, thank you again. And everyone, see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. If you haven't already, please go ahead and like us on Spotify, follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and all the socials. We're really looking forward to bringing you some really awesome episodes. So enjoy and have a wonderful day. See you on the next one.